devices. So diagnostics working group, WebAssembly group, and docs. Can we have a representative from each one that will join us up here? Diagnostics.
You can just, if you're live now, so if you want to do a little bit of introduction,
great.
It would be nice for our friends.
Okay. I will stop projecting for the entire universe. So, wow, I am brain dead and saturated, and it was great to see everybody and had so much fun, and felt like we accomplished both a lot and have like an infinite amount of things still to go to. Too much. Too many things. So yeah, it was a really wonderful collaboration session. One of my biggest takeaways from these various sessions have been this is valuable to meet and have synchronous time, and now we really need to convey that information back to the rest of the project, back to all of the hundreds of people who aren't actually here with us. There have been really valuable discussions, and let's make sure that we take what we've learned and what we've collaborated together today back to the project and create issues and make sure we're bringing everybody to the point of where we are. Don't take these meetings and this time as something that we've all achieved. We need to invest in the rest of the project to bring everybody forward. So diagnostics is the only one in. So a couple minutes, right?
Yep. I just have a very short summary. So here I put it onto the issue itself. So this is a summary of what we talked about. We had a very short update on async terminology from Mark. So the sort of baseline on async hooks is that we think we need a common terminology and approach to be able to talk and reason about that. And that's what Mark has been working on, and as well as Mike from Microsoft. And that sort of led into the next one where we're talking about async hooks exit criteria. And really the main exit criteria that sort of is something we need to work on and just sort of wait on is actually understanding that terminology and in context so that we can talk about that and be sure that we've got the API right. The kind of feeling is that until we get that level of understanding and the ability to reason about it, we're not necessarily going to be comfortable that we have the right API moving forward. And so that's really the key criteria which we talked about. We talked about a few things from the last summit, so just talking about moving node report into core. The update there is that there should be a PR with the steps that we're going to follow to do that imminently. It's not there yet. We then also had a good discussion on testing tiers in terms of, how do we make sure that the tools we're building, like LL Node or Flame Graph support and stuff like that, things we're doing on that front, we don't regress them. And should they be blocking for shipping different versions of Node and stuff like that? So, the concrete next steps that we came out were that we need to just add some tests. We actually have something to tell us if something's regressed. We then need to propose the tools and what tiers they would fall into. And for example, if we see a regression, would that prevent us from upgrading to the next level of V8? Would it prevent us from shipping an LTS? But we basically need to come up with a proposal. We might go out and do a broader survey like we did for the benchmarking working group to get broader feedback in terms of what people think in terms of the tools and what should be blocking and not blocking. And then finally, we just very quickly agreed there's an issue to merge the postmortem and diagnostic working groups, and everybody is in agreement, so we just need to actually make that happen. So those are the things that we talked about. If you have any questions, you can ask any of the people who were there or in the bench or in the diagnostic working group. And of course, that group meets, I think it's every 2 or 3 weeks. I can't remember off the top of my head, but please come to the meetings and participate there as well.
Great. Can I add one little thing that I was particularly excited about? Async hooks and the maturity and the definitions that we have of it may even we're liking it and considering it as a proposal to take and potentially bring back to JavaScript language. I'm very excited about that as a primitive for at a language level for how we're tracing that.
I guess one more, just back to the link. It's a fairly nice 4 or 5 page thing, so if you can read it and comment, that would be great.
So WebAssembly. Sure.
All right. So if you remember from the morning's slides, I had some slides about how might Node native WASM modules look like. So we kind of just got more into like details and talked through various cases like native modules can do a syscall. What does that look like for WASM? Short answer should be, well, you import a function that does a syscall, call that. And native modules open DLLs and then do arbitrary stuff so they can connect to some database or something else. What would that look like in WASM? And so that as well, we'd have an API to probably do some sort of DL open and DL sim that WASM could call. And so basically we talked to various use cases and also what it might look like to make this work in V8. And it didn't seem like there are any big roadblocks or impossibilities, just lots of work and lots of API design and but good potential. So I think there's some follow-ups for people to investigate, start prototyping that, and go from there.
Where do folks go to track ongoing WebAssembly activities in Node?
That's a good question. That was actually discussed. We discussed having some Node people come and start attending the WebAssembly CG meetings and represent the Node use case of WASM. And not sure who was. Actually, I think there was an action item for somebody to look out to the community and try to find some people to attend. And they would be most welcome. CG has lots of people. Anyone's free to join. You can just click join this community group, and you can just join the video. Yeah, that's every 2 weeks.
Awesome. Thank you. Documentation.
So we had a pretty extensive discussion about documentation. It stemmed from initially website redesign and then internationalization, both kind of wanting to talk about this, and then I picked the issue to actually do that. So I did put the minutes or the notes, I guess, in here, and also one of the individuals from RunKit also made their own minutes that were like almost verbatim. So I highly suggest checking that out because they did a much better job than I did. But yeah, so we kind of begun by discussing our current use cases and what's on the horizon for us. So internationalization and website redesign specifically, and what the interactions that they're probably going to end up having with the docs, what that looks like. And then we actually went down the road of sharing with the group a demo of updated docs that the RunKit team put together for the website redesign initiative. And it's a pretty good implementation. It doesn't actually change the current content at all. It just extracts the code blocks and actually puts them in RunKit like runtimes in the side. So it's a really nice interaction, and we're interested in kind of being able to do that. And we also took a look at graceful degradation. So if you don't have JavaScript enabled or anything like that, or if you're offline, it's not going to be an issue for you. It's still going to render as a code block. You just won't be able to run it with a runtime, basically. So we also kind of went into a bit around guides. We came back to that topic a few times. Currently, there are guides on the Node.js site. They're not super well maintained. As far as I know, we haven't added one in a while, and we've also not gone back and actually updated the older ones. But we came to a few conclusions around that. Like one thing that we, in addition to docs, we could do some versioning around that and pin them to specific Node versions with some YAML front matter and help the story around upgradability and long-term usage of those guides. And also, one of the things we ended up getting into as a broader discussion is automation. So, CI/CD checking and also installing apps on the GitHub org or on the Node repo to kind of be able to deal and reduce some of the maintainer burden around docs. Because one of the things we did discuss was how heavy of a burden docs are. They usually end up being one of the last things that happens in Node core. And on top of that, they're not super great. Like it's not a good contribution process. So we wanted to kind of see if we can help reduce that barrier, that level of maintenance, and begin kind of helping let core contributors focus on core and kind of abstract some of the more repetitive tasks around documentation. And so that kind of came up in a few places, one with guides, where, letting people know, hey, this guide needs to be updated when it goes out of date, or, having them be able to check it. And then also, there's a few things around, separate topic now. There's actually a Node.js file that's currently generated that gives a API, full context on the API, including that in the documentation and as an API reference would be a helpful thing. And we actually learned that RunKit themselves uses that JSON file to report Node errors, which is very interesting because I think Rich said that we don't use it currently in Node at all. It's just kind of generated and left there. So that was a very interesting revelation. So, another suggestion that got brought up was to begin automating or augmenting the documentation to understand success and failure with the documentation. So, this was brought up by one of the Amazon employees who said, it's kind of an old trope, but having the plus and minus, or the happy face and sad face to see if this works for you. And if it did, you're going to see, a moderate or a high amount of happy faces. But then the second it stops working, you're going to start seeing a very high amount of sad faces. And so that gives you kind of an indicator of, oh, hey, this stopped working, or there's something weird with this specific piece of documentation. It might not be indicative of the code, but it might be something that, hey, our docs are wrong. And so that also gave rise to a little bit of additional information around. I believe we should stop on time. A little bit of additional context around analytics. So we had a few people raise their hand to help out. Zeke said he'd help out working on a bot around docs. I can't pronounce your name. I'm sorry. Shandon? Yeah, Shandon. Perfect. RunKit said RunKit said he'd help out with the analytics story. Dominic said he'd be having help out with guides. And then, yes, that's right. Franzi said she'd be able to help out with a video tutorial on contributing to guides, or contributing to the documentation, rather. And then Nicola offered help improve or fix our tutorials. So.
Where can folks go to continue their following the docs?
We didn't get that far.
Yeah. So come to ComCom meetings.
Yeah. So we discussed this. I don't think, did we land on something solid? No, we didn't. Okay. Yeah. So I guess I will take that as an action item, create a ComCom issue around docs, and then we can discuss it further there. So,
awesome.
Yep.
All right. Next group is promises, diversity, inclusivity, and modules. Modules. There's a lot of promises here. Sorry, Miles showed up and there were puns. All right. So promises.
Just yeah, you can view the full notes from the session, also linked in this issue. But here are just a few takeaways that we decided first of all, the async stack tracing is extremely important for users, and yeah, we will work on that shortly. The next thing we pointed out is that the async hooks can solve a lot of the problems that were common among users and were pointed out and actually gathered by Benjamin. So we have current work going for making these faster so that users can use them in production as well. And also the performance improvements in native promises should be communicated better, because currently the common understanding is that you should use Bluebird, and apparently this is no longer the truth. So we already updated some docs regarding this, Benjamin specifically. And also we might need better hooks for promises. There were a few more examples where some exceptions get swallowed or lost when using, for instance, the await keyword in a for each state. So if anybody wants to
I just want to thank everyone who participated. I learned a lot, and thank you.
Great, thanks a lot. You're welcome to sit down.
Okay.
All right, so next up, diversity and inclusivity.
If you just go to 75, you can get to the issue right away. Almost.
So thanks, Chinny, for the notes. So there were lots of discussions about diversity and inclusivity. First, to have a bit of everyone's definitions. Tracy gave us a pretty huge recap of the past efforts. And then
the group mostly focused on what would be the priorities for inclusivity, and that came down to how do proposals work, strategies for collaboration in the larger community, support for follow through, and as well as speaker diversity, participation, shifting the spotlight. And then from there, we took that list of recommendations for what inclusivity should be focusing on. And we talked about some of the actionable things that can happen, including a welcome bot for the GitHub comments and the first PR issues. And also, the prototype for bots giving badges. We talked about Node Together initiatives in general, and then we established a new working group, which right now will be co-chaired by myself and Benjamin. I'm Patricia, by the way. And we've opted to use the name Outreach so as to avoid any of the complications that happened when the name was Inclusivity. And from there, we'll be setting up meetings. So if you'd like to participate, please follow the the Outreach repo. Gotta make sure not to do that ever again.
the repo setup is just completely empty for now, but we'll be putting it.
Yeah, so if you're interested in participating, please follow along with that repo. We'll be setting up meetings and setting up projects to be working on soon.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I'm excited about that.
So Outreach.
Modules.
I'm exhausted. I don't know about all of you. We didn't take notes. There's a video. We spent a good chunk of the time just kind of going from like ES4 packages all the way to kind of the latest proposals that are coming up in the module group, and we just kind of stopped for questions while going through it. One of the things that I think was really important about it is it was made really clear, you know, the modules group is fairly open if you want to get involved. If you go to the governance.md file, all the information is in there about joining the modules team. If you're interested, you can just open a pull request, and by the next meeting, you know, we can invite you to join the team. Things are moving forward. I think one of the biggest takeaways from the meeting was we've been in an iterative process for a while, and there are some real deadlines that we need to meet, especially if we want to, for example, see modules unflagged in LTS for Node 12. So I think moving out of this, we're going to go back to the group, and a lot of the people from the team weren't actually here, so we didn't really make any decisions, but we're going to go back to the team and working backwards from a deadline of the LTS date of kind of like, you know, a year and a half to October of 2019, when 12 would go LTS, start thinking about what kind of deadlines we have if we want to be able to ship that. I'll be giving, I gave a bit of the talk, but I'll be giving a JSConf to you on Saturday, so if any of you are around, you'll get, like, you know, the first 20, 30 minutes of what we did. Cool, grab me if you have questions.
Awesome, thank you, Miles. So follow the activity in the modules group for the next steps. So next group, ComCom was just an internal meeting, right? Are we going to share context for that session? Or?
Yeah.
Yes, we are?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So streams, website redesign, internationalization, and I10N, and then ComCom. Please come on. This will be the last one, so we're almost done. Thank you for your patience. Streams.
Oh, get out of here.
Where's Miles? Miles, get up here.
All right, streams, please.
Streams. Can you open up the issue? I posted notes. So, yeah, thank you. Because I can't remember things. So, but again. So, first of all, turns out that streams docs are a mess, and to be being saying it in very plain words. And we need some help in improving the documentation on how to use streams.
Stay tuned to documentation.
It's one of the top 10 most viewed docs.
Yeah,
Nice.
that's nice, but it's also one. It's probably the top one, the top useless one. Yeah, kind of. So, more importantly, there is a bunch of things that are important for that, and one is, you know, link to the modules of NPM that are must-haves for streams, and also how to do certain things with streams, common things that we might want to articulate in our docs better. We need a lot of help there. Like, there's no, currently the streams people is a very low bus factor. In certain cases it's 1, in certain cases it's 2. So it needs a little bit of help from everybody in getting that up to speed. Another problem, this goes back to the second problem, which is how do we scale the development? Again, there is a very low bus factor in there, and we are very busy in all the reviews that are coming through and so on. So it's if you want to get involved, please reach out. There is a readable stream repo. Please reach out there, and we can start helping you. I already talked about the userland modules. Turns out that our test coverage for stream is very bad. This came out recently in some of the breakages from Node on Node 10, especially on HTTP response because it quacks like a stream, but it's not stream or something like that.
Babbles like a stream.
No, it's whatever. We need tests, especially for the event ordering. So these events happen before this event and after this event, is in especially weird situation and error cases. Then we are going to use the vehicle stream repo as the issue tracking position. We need to clean this up tomorrow, probably in the next few days. Some more things that are not mentioned because it's not the full thing. We are going to do a significant rework of some of the how streams are used within core, mainly because we want to make sure that destroy is always called. So there is a new destroy method, but we can't guarantee right now that it's always called as the last action, leading to some very strange and dangerous and custom patched ifs that you can see in some of our modules. Somebody is laughing and they know exactly what I'm talking about. But if for those of you that you don't know, there is some very edge cases that leads out to very bad bugs. So we want to solve them properly. Turns out that we probably need a mini stream summit at some point in the future. We'll try to set it up.
Is that something that we would engage what weight streams in, or is that going to be internal?
These at this point trying to fix our own mess. Okay. We talked briefly about what WG streams, and it doesn't seem like the major assumption is we can't break Node. So it's there is very no like we can't use them as HTTP request, HTTP response. We can't use them for this type of things. Okay, so it's probably the ship for doing those sale numbers.
Where do we tune in to find the details on the mini stream summit?
I have no idea yet. So
okay,
it's reading up. One more thing to say: we also talked extensively about some of this work that Jeremiah is doing. He presented this new Bob initiative, whatever. It's
15.
No, it's more or less come from a C++ angle. Before that, it's to enable ideally several X performance improvement from instead like 8X performance, more throughput out of things. And then see if we can bring that up to the ecosystem. But this is very long-term goal. We might have set up a call like for that later.
Do you want to mention the fetch thing?
Yes. So we talked a bit about fetch, which is probably why we talked about also the what WG streams. So one of the things that we talked about fetch was that we might. One of the suggestions there was that we might want to ship a very limited version of fetch, not implementing the full spec, just implementing the base use case that solves like 50–60% of the problem. I don't know if this is possible because it's what.
Yeah, most people await fetch was the TLDR,
typically.
right? Right. So nobody's yes, it's possible to iterate over the chunks that you're getting back from a WG stream. Is anyone really using that? Should we ship it all or individually? Right, exactly. But again, it's the get some input on this, maybe not just implement the whole feature, implement part of it, because essentially that's what people are getting today with their polyfills. That's the really important thing, is that when you use something like isomorphic fetch, you're not getting a full spec fetch implementation in Node. You're getting something that you can await, and that's it. So maybe just pave that cow path and then talk about full spec.
And then move forward to the full spec thing if there is an actual need for this. Mm-hmm. So if there are actual people asking for the full WG streams, whatever. Right. Because it will be currently very much incompatible with what you already have in Node. So it's a long road if you want to have full compatibility with those. So it's coming there. So hey,
awesome.
Streams.
Thank you, streams. All right, website redesign.
We have 3 more groups. There's 3 groups, so there's 4 total. There was 1 too many. So.
What? And if I could make a contribution to the streams conversation, that mini stream summit needs to be called the Trickle Summit 2018.
That's my only contribution to it.
Ryan says no.
No? Cool. So we had an awesome meeting considering the website redesign, specifically content creation. So whereas the first website redesign meeting, the documentation meeting we had was very much technical. How do we merge these to make sure these two working groups work in tandem together? This one was, what content do we need to create to actually make the best experience? So we had a very creative agenda. We had a really quick high-level report of the progress so far, and we moved on to a bunch of exercises for this rapid ideation of new content for the soon-to-be learn section of the website with getting started pages and more advanced tutorials. Yeah. So we, a little bit of history. The website redesign initiative is formatted very much like a product. So we were going through a number of phases. First, we did a quick information gathering phase where we went and learned about existing past efforts for website redesign, whether successful or otherwise. We had an awesome IA, information architecture, and user experience round where we came out with a wireframe of that got bashed the heck out of on GitHub. And we were left with something that we think will make a very good structure for structuring the new website and voice and tone guidelines for updating and drafting new content. Also very much a work in progress. And we're now in the current phase, which is the very UI and content focused phase. So we're working on design systems tickets to kind of make this foundation of design elements that can live on past whatever designer ends up working on the next high fidelity mocks. Speaking of which, we're working on high fidelity mocks of the site, which Stripe very kindly is donating. I always say Square, that's why. Stripe is very kindly donating 3 months of a designer's time to help us push forward this initiative. So we're going to be leveraging that designer immensely over the next 3 months. But we haven't really started on new content. So we wanted to use this session as an opportunity to iterate on new content ideas, especially for this learn section where it's going to be a lot of new stuff, like Tierney mentioned in the past presentation. We have a few guides up there. We don't really have a good getting started story. And the guides that are up there are outdated and probably more advanced than what some users might need. So we're very focused on content. And in our actual session, we went through these 4 exercises. We got 3, unfortunately. But the very first was stakeholder ID.
Yeah, stakeholder. So this has come up before. An issue was made. Thank you. It's very necessary. I feel like this tagline needs to be revisited because it doesn't really, it's not exactly a human way to describe what Node does for the JavaScript ecosystem as a whole. So before getting too deep into that and like sparking some debate here, we'll just move on to what we did to try and flesh out what our idea of stakeholders would be for Node.js. The idea being that if we can identify the stakeholders, we can create user personas for them, and if we can create user personas, we can figure out exactly what kind of getting started content they would like to see on the website. So after this, kind of fill in the blanks. I wonder if there's a quote of that, maybe in the next one. And yeah, after people, like we had people come up with suggestions for that, then we started trying to sort them out, categorize them, so that later on we would be able to create the personas, and that's what we did. We ideated around and iterated around creating user personas, which we then started trying to create titles for in terms of getting started content, which we did in part C. That was the beginning, and we gave it about 20 minutes, and we kind of ended with that.
So each sticky note you see on the board is the title of a potential piece of content or documentation that particular user persona might be looking for on the site.
Mm-hmm. We haven't gone through all of it yet. We had a high-level discussion because we were quickly running out of time. We had a high-level
Unfortunately, closest sticky right there.
Right.
So there was a slide earlier on about religious debates and that we're trying to avoid them. There's going to be a lot of questions about what should we document on the site, what should we
be communicating here? Is it our responsibility to talk about the ecosystem? And if so, how deep should we go? We explicitly ask people to not consider those questions early on. We wanted like high output, get as much content onto the board as we can, and we can tackle those area issues when we have more than an hour and a half, because we could dedicate an entire session just to answering those questions and not get into this content.
Yeah, and it was great. The stuff that came out was across the board, and I think we fleshed out a bunch of what it would look like for different types of developers to use this, and also non-developers. There was one category for that I fell into. If we move on to the next slide, we won't go through this because there's no time at all, but you have the usual things like how to learn Node.js. Maybe there are a couple in there that are a little bit more specific, but some of them had a little bit more like stuff that was unusual that we hadn't considered. So we're looking forward to going through it and putting something together for people to work on.
So we have a lot of information here. There we go. We have a lot of information here to synthesize, and we're going to pretty soon be getting this up on GitHub in places where everybody can chime in and comment. And this was a one-time session just to get the base level of content there. There's going to be a lot of sorting through and a lot of new content that's going to be proposed online as we continue trying to sort out what this section
And an earlier session, I think video and getting started PR was going to be made. I think.
Yes,
that should look there.
Please verbalize your follow-up.
Yeah, so we have a repository website redesign in Node. We have a lot of open tickets over there where all the discussions happening for web redesign. We also meet every other Thursday at, I don't know the
same time.
Yeah, we're gonna
no, it's 8 p.m. Pacific.
8 a.m. Pacific.
8 a.m. Pacific.
Yeah. All that information is on the repo.
Great. Awesome. Big one. Yeah. So, internationalization.
So while they're going to set up, I'll just say there are a lot of different ways to interpret what internationalization means. In this context, we're talking about taking Node's documentation from Node.js, Node docs, and moving it over to a platform where we can translate it and eventually display it on the website.
I'm so prepared with decks.
I just looked this up.
Actually, so prepared.
So,
it takes a second. Every time I've had to, do it twice.
So I'll get ahead of your question about where people can follow.
Where can we go?
Node.js/i18n, which we've been using for a while. There's code in it, but more interestingly, there is a project, a GitHub project, where we're kind of tracking the progress of issues and pull requests as we land them.
Did it show up now?
Flash.
Blue.
I saw pink.
Flash.
I saw white.
Okay.
I heard you.
Gold.
Yay!
So I wanted to feel official too and whip up a slide deck while I was standing here. So here's ours. Internationalization is rad. We did a lot of awesome wizardry today. It was super great. I basically just grabbed this list from GitHub. So today we integrated our crowd-in user bot with Node.js. So crowd-in is officially integrated with Node. It's awesome. Which we also set up that integration and recorded it for all our members who are here today. So the integration happened. That's amazing. It's been a long time coming.
Yeah, it's been like over a month.
We also set up and turned on Travis CI in the internationalization repo, retesting and more today, and it just worked. So that was rad. And we set up,
And our localization groups are now live. So this is literally day 0 of translation. So happened today. And right now we're targeting reference documentation for nodes 6, 8, and 10, and yeah, and then we're also discussing things on targets for translation within the website redesign. And yeah, and then at the very end of our, I mean, this is pretty much what we did. It was like synchronous working today. We just got stuff done. That was wonderful.
For the initiated ECMO 402?
Yeah, no, not for 402. We didn't work on 402 stuff. I was just saying that Dan gave us an update on 402.
What is ECMO 402?
Oh, what is ECMO 402? Yeah, 402 is the specification for internationalization of text, which you know, like V8 uses, Chrome uses, Node uses. So since we've been so heavily focused on translating textual content for various things like websites and API reference documentation and whatever, like we also are interested in seeing how we can help out for the actual translation, that goes into Node itself.
Great.
So yeah, that's what we did. Zeke, you have anything to say?
Awesome. So international. Where was the location?
Node.js/IATNet. Where can people contribute to translations? How can they start doing that?
Right.
Go to IATNet.
Go to that repository. There's a link. The GitHub repository link to the Crowdin page.
Yeah, and if you want a little bit of clarity on the translation process for that, Crowdin is what we use. It's an amazing service. It abstracts, the translation process outside of GitHub, so translators don't have to have any contact with like the actual, technical stuff we're doing. They can just go to the Crowdin service to see a list of documents, and then it gives a percentage of how much is translated. They can pick up where people left off. It's amazing. So translators don't have to be tied into our development process. They can work directly in Crowdin.
And this is the process that Electron already implemented for their internationalization.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
All right.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Last but not least, ComCom individual membership.
Yeah, so today we decided to have a quick ComCom meeting, and we've all split up into other groups. That didn't happen. We met the whole hour and a half. ComCom recently was tasked, well, two things happened. ComCom was given a board seat, a director seat, to take over the old individual director seat that is currently held by Ashley Williams. But in that same process, we also were assigned to and volunteered to take on the individual membership for the Node.js Foundation. And so we've been given scope to kind of go and tease out what individual membership should look like. No,
that's me teasing.
Oh yeah. So we've been given scope to kind of go and figure out what we want to do with that, or what should be done with that, and not what we want to do with it. What should be done with it to make it an effective program. Or if it can be made into an effective program. If not, we have the scope to sunset that. But we do think, generally it seems like we think that it can be an effective program. There's going to need to be some pretty major changes that are going to happen. But we haven't decided on those changes yet. We have general ideas, but we really want to start hearing from more people and hearing your thoughts on, cool, I'd love to individual membership to be successful. Here's how I think it could be successful. We don't want this to just be created in a vacuum, because that's a path to failure. I think the original one had very good intents, but I don't, as we can see now, I think the implementation wasn't perfect. So we have a chance now to kind of go and revitalize that and make it an effective thing. And from the discussions we've had, we generally seem to agree that it shouldn't look anything like what it looks like now. But we're happy to be told we're wrong and get anyone's input on this.
What does individual membership mean?
No! All right. Talk to Tierney at dinner.
I'll be rolling JS.
So there's one more thing for me to add really quickly. I was told to follow up to inspire.
Marching orders.
Yeah, what's up? So the foundation, when it was spun up in the project IOJS and Node merged, was very much, hyper-focused on making sure we had a stable project. Everyone was hyper-focused on core. We're trying to make sure we can get releases out. Out of this came, the LTS program, our release program that we have now, the ComCom, all these different things that kind of spun up, which is like kind of miles from where we started, which was very much like, oh, like, is Node even going to like keep shipping? But so where we're at today, I mentioned this a bit at Interactive, but we are at this kind of inflection point. I think the individual membership program is a really great example of a larger thing that we have to examine, which is like, what is the goal of our foundation? And I think traditionally as collaborators, we've been very reactive of just like keeping things shipping and keeping things moving. We have tons and tons of things happening, and maybe not as much velocity as we'd like with all of the things happening. But one of the things that we have not been is explicit about what we want the goal of our foundation to be. And I think that part of in the individual membership program and the individual membership directors and some of the other elected directors, I think, at least for myself in the past, I was kind of waiting to hear from the board or from the foundation, like, what are we doing? Why are we doing this? What is the foundation? And my experience in the last year has really left me feeling like, it's up to us. If we stop, like, we could have decided to do this today. I'm glad we didn't, but we could have all just been like, I'm done with this. But like, if we stopped working on Node, if we stopped shipping Node, there is no foundation. And in reality, and I don't see Mark because I think the foundation people left for dinner, so they can't tell me I'm wrong right now. But the foundation works for us. The board works for us. As the collaborators, they work to empower us, and they work to march towards the vision that we have for Node and for JavaScript and kind of the greater ontological whole of open source. So I think one of the things we should be challenging ourselves with in the coming months is, what do we want our foundation to be doing? What is the goal of our foundation? What do we want our board to be doing for us? What do we want our executive director doing for us? And I think that if we continue to be passive about these things, we will continue to have more passive results, and that may be fine. If the goal that we want is we want Node to ship, cool, we've done that. Let's just keep doing our thing. But if we have like a broader idea of like what we want to see for open source, what we want to see for JavaScript, what we want to see for Node, we need to be very intentional about it. And in the same way that we kind of program can be, which is really how do we empower people that aren't just part of our collaboratorship, we need to think about like, what is the foundation and what are we working towards and what is the goal? And so I leave that with all of you to think about. And in the coming weeks, I think we'll have some more opportunities to have these conversations. But if we hit the reset button today, if we could completely start from a blue sky, what would we want our foundation to be doing? What would we want to be focusing on? What would be our goals? And I think that answering some of those questions can start bubbling down to, okay, what are the goals of the individual membership? But can also bubble as high as like, hey, what do we want Mark doing for us as an executive director? What do we want the Node Foundation to meet? And what do we want it to be? And so, yeah, I'll leave you with that. Thank you.
Awesome. So two more really quick things. Tonight, so it's 6 o'clock right now. Tonight at 7 is a dinner at Brauhaus Lemke. There is a document inside of the Summit repo, and I also linked to that in the bottom of the thing. The massive list of things, you'll find a link to dinner. So see you all at 7. Then tomorrow, we are not here, right? So we're in a different location. Do not come to AWS tomorrow. They will put you to work. We will be at Mozilla Berlin. And we'll see you at 9 a.m. there. And
It's written 10, but
I know. I'm ignoring.
We don't know.
10. We'll see you at 9 at Mozilla Berlin. And thank you for taking the time today.
Also, the schedule, I'm sorry, the schedule moved up a little bit for the end of the day. So we adjusted for finishing a little bit earlier and also having lunch a little bit earlier because we were asked by Mozilla to move the lunchtime. Let us know if these times don't work for y'all. I tried to touch base with everyone, but everyone who's also planning on being here, being at Mozilla for these things, I just wanted to make sure you knew that some things shifted an hour. And also we can just walk over from the restaurant whenever. I just confirmed with Mark and Greg that we can go sooner than 7. They're going to be there already.
Oh, for now.
Oh, cool. Great.
Yeah.
Moms.
Is it walkable from here?
It's 27-minute walk from here, so.
That's walkable.
It's nice weather, but it's a long walk.
What if we're late?
What if we're late? You're late.
I think that's fine.
Yeah. It's Europe and we'll probably linger for a while. Thank you. See you at dinner.
Day 2, right?